Hello, hello. Hi, guys. Welcome. Um, I think we got some people trickling in here. We'll just give folks a second to get situated. Oh, I see some of I recognize some of these names. Welcome, folks. Maybe while people are just trickling in, I'll just start by, I think most people on this call know who I am, but I'll just reintroduce myself. My name is Alexander Carson, but most people call me Sandy. I'm the chair of the BCA program and have been since 2024. I've also been an instructor and a professor with the program since its inception in 2021. And my background is as a filmmaker. I realized at some point this year that actually our film production company turned 20 this summer, which dates me a little bit. So now you all know how old I am, roughly. Yeah, North Country Cinema was founded in 2005. That was a production company I started with some people who I met in my own undergraduate studies at Concordia University. And for better or worse, here we are, 20 years later, still making films together. My experience is mostly as a writer director, but also as a as a producer, a somewhat reluctant producer, but because it's not my favorite part of the job. But I think that as these folks are going to talk about a little bit today, um, if you want to be the boss, then you gotta run the ship to some extent. So learning some of those skills, I think, was a big part of why I am where I'm at today. So anyway, we can touch back on some of that as it's appropriate as part of the conversation. But I think probably the people who are coming are here now. We have 18 people plus all the panelists, so I think that we can probably get started. So, good night, everyone, and welcome to the BCA alumni panel, the inaugural BCA alumni panel, as far as I'm aware, called Creative Entrepreneurship, Building Your Own Brand in the Arts. And we're thrilled to have you with us. So thanks especially to Rogine, Reith, Adam, and Ahisu for being here. And thanks to all you guys who are participating tonight. This is going to be a great conversation. But before we begin, I'm just going to speak a land acknowledgement here. That at Yorkville University and Toronto Film School, we recognize that our campuses, both physical and online, exist on and draw resources um, from sorry from the traditional lands of diverse Indigenous peoples and nations in New Brunswick. This includes the lands of the Wabanaki Confederacy, the Mi'kmaq, the Wolastoqiyik, and Maliseet under the Peace and Friendship Treaties of 1760 and 1761. In Toronto, our campuses sit on the treaty lands of the Toronto Purchase, home to the Mississaugas of the Credit, the Anishinaabe, the Chippewa, the Haudenosaunee, and the Wendat peoples. And in British Columbia, our campus is on the unceded territories of the Kayakot, Musqueam, and Coast Salish peoples. So we share this acknowledgement as a reminder of our ongoing commitment to strengthening our relationships with local Indigenous communities, deepening our understanding of the people whose lands we live and work on. As a university, we have a responsibility to recognize the lasting impacts of colonization and keep learning how we can be part of meaningful change. So acknowledging this land, it isn't just a formality, it's a way to pause, reflect, and honor the communities who have cared for these lands for generations. And by continuing to engage in truth and reconciliation, we can take small but important steps toward a more just and respectful future for everyone in Canada. Thank you. All right, now let's get started. So I've already provided a brief introduction to myself and my history and my practice. I think maybe we'll just go around in order of the way that I see people, if that sounds okay. Can we start? Can you introduce yourself, Regine, to start?
Yes, hi everybody. My name is Rogine Hamid. I started off as a graphic designer still by trade. I graduated the BCA program last year with the launch of my book, Creative Catharsis. And I'm just in the industry to be a creative professional and making sure that the things that I work on have a lot of creative and innovative ways of teaching as well as learning for adults, I would say, for the most part. And that's just me.
Great. Well, we can talk a bit more about creative catharsis hopefully a little bit later, but
Mhm.
fantastic project. Okay, well, thank you for being here, Reith.
Thank you for having me. Good evening, everyone. My name is Reet Mazumdar Roberts. I am a television producer. I work mostly on true crime shows, so basically television journalism. However, I started with scripted projects, and I'm a Bachelor of Creative Arts graduate. I remember that the day I was graduating and I was giving my speech on the stage, I did say that I wanted to do television because I was only doing scripted work, and you know how the indie world works, like you put your own money and you produce, and that's how we all start, and exactly that's how I started. But the reason I wanted to do BCA was because I wanted to do TV, and 6 months after graduating I started doing my television projects. That's a bit about me. Thank you.
When she says doing her speech, she means being valedictorian at the convocation. Just want to add that for additional context. Um, Wonderful. Ahisu?
Hi everyone, good evening. My name is Ahisu Olankajimi Ahisu. And thank you for having me, Sandy. Thank you to Yorkville at TFS. I'm a creative producer, director, um, mostly freelance and independent, but I also work full time with a non-governmental organization as a video creative producer. My work spans photography, filmmaking, basically everything that's like media, graphic design, and all of that. But the I just want to tell stories that blend creativity, strategy, and drive social impact. So that's a little bit about me. I'm also a graduate of film production from TFS and the Creative Arts Program.
And Adam.
Hi, I'm Adam Van Ludekeisen. I completed the graphic design and interactive media diploma at Toronto Film School and then the BCA program at Yorkville University. I work in-house as a senior graphic designer for the Toronto Blue Jays. I work on a super talented team that handles everything from seasonal campaigns to big stadium creative, merch, promos, brand systems, you name it.
As a sports fan, dude, I was so stoked when I saw your campaign for the playoffs.
I have a hard time talking about it still, but
Yeah, little
it's
tender.
still pretty fresh. But yeah, no, I appreciate it. It was really cool to see the buzz around all that.
Well, yeah, I think you contributed to shaping that buzz, I think. So anyway, good for you. Nice work.
Thanks.
All right, guys. Well, thanks. Thanks so much for the quick introductions. Let's get into the discussion because, of course, you didn't just end up where you are right now. There was a bit of a process. So let's talk a little bit about how you got there, where you started, and what the trajectory was, and maybe we can just go around in the same order. How your thinking changed, how your creative practice changed. Maybe you can even roll in a little bit of like how did the experience of doing the BCA perhaps change the direction of your kind of creative and entrepreneurial growth regime?
Yeah, so I already had a background in entrepreneurship from my graphic design program back when I was at St. Lawrence College. So I went from high school doing a lot of art and art history into graphic design. And then from graphic design, I did my entrepreneurship with my small business, the Owl Palette. I started branding really early on because they kind of force you to do that in graphic design. Adam, I don't know if they did that to you, but they did that to me. They're like, okay, got to create a brand now. And then it moved into more of the corporate world, trying to teach and generate information that is teachable to adults. So taking that graphic design and applying it to that kind of world. And then from there on end, I joined the BCA program later in life because I felt like something was missing. I felt like there was something more that I needed to do. And I wanted to prove myself that there was uh, a project out there that I could do that was a little bit more on the creative side where I can also help people because I was really into art therapy for a long time and trying to get into that. And so when I joined the BCA program, I learned so much and I learned so much about myself too. And that kind of launched me into this world where I now have a product to produce that I produced, and it is meant to help people more than it is to just be out there in the world of books. So the BCA program really helped me kind of do that. When I decided to join, it was really heart-wrenching because I had to drop my old job and full-time do the school stuff, and that really kind of changed my thought process on how I am as a creative person and what I'm going to do going forward. Did I
So,
answer the question? I feel like I went on a tangent.
no, I think you did great. I have a follow-up question just before we move on. So was there a moment that you realized that you needed to kind of build a brand, or was that sort of thrust upon you by post-secondary education?
It was definitely thrusted upon me because they wanted us to understand that when we go into entrepreneurship eventually, because that was part of the program, we needed something to stand on. So when we were given that, I already had somewhat of a brand to begin with when I was in high school,
Mm.
where a lot of people recognized my art. I was trying to show it off. I was trying to like do something with that because have a fine art background. And so it just kind of solidified what was already there that I didn't have fully put together yet.
So, okay, let me just stick with you, Regine, for a minute then, because
Mm-hmm.
you mentioned your project, Creative Catharsis, which was a sort of blend of your interests in art therapy and entrepreneurship and publishing.
Mm-hmm.
Um, Track us through the trajectory of that project and where you at with it now, because it's been out there for what, a year now, something like that?
Yeah, no, it's actually pretty great. So the way it kind of came about was after a year of kind of really thinking on the final project that we had to do. I I had this notion in my mind that I wanted something that I could still kind of do a part research and part creative work for myself. So the big thing for me was to understand how I'm going to get what product I'm going to choose to do that with, and then how I'm going to get it out there. So it really started with like 6 months of basically research, collaborations with my partner, Krista Barr. She did most of the design layout of it. I did most of the research and the actual designs of the images. So with Creative Catharsis, we had a combination of two things. We had the therapy side of it that's backed up by registered therapists, and then we had the artistic part of it, which was the designs of the actual book. So as you're flipping through the pages, you'll see breathing exercises, interviews with psychologists, and then you see on the other pages, you'll see those beautiful designs where there's mandalas and florals and things like that that can captivate those people who need to focus and kind of like do a hands-on work outside of the therapy part of it. So from that, I really wanted to ensure like there was a product out there that allowed people to not only just color, enjoy your art, but to help in that aspect of mindfulness and making sure that you are being aware of your cognitive and mental wellness. So that was something that we really, really pushed on to ensure that it was nothing like you've seen before.
And so then you self-published the book.
Yes.
I think before you even graduated BCA, you had self-published the book on
Yes.
Amazon, right?
Yes.
Has that has you don't of course have to reveal any specifics here, but has that been lucrative, or has that led to the next project, or is Creative Catharsis becoming a brand in itself? Will there be other iterations of this?
That's a great question. So the hope is to do another portion of the book. So we did some stuff, but I want to take it a little bit further and show that there are activities for art therapy. So it's not just coloring. There's other ways that you can be artistic and be mindful and have that tool up your sleeve. So my next goal was technically going to be a podcast. I haven't started it because I'm still figuring out how to write it. But I definitely have more images for the next book. But I want to incorporate more art therapy practices instead of just therapy practices, because there's a difference between the two. One is being able to just relax and calm down and de-stress, and the other one is more of let's kind of get into the nitty gritty of how are we going to help you as a person with your mental health through artistic activities? So whether that be drawing a small cartoon or, doing a step-by-step guide on painting or whatever artistic ability that you have, you're going to present it through the artwork that you create. So that was my next step. I haven't quite gotten there yet because I do want to work with Krista Barr again to see if there's something that we can do to collaborate and bring our two ideas together to see if there's something that is there. And I feel like there is, because art therapy is huge right now, and it's provided through a lot of different small companies, but it's not exactly widely spread. So, for example, if there's somebody who can't afford to go to one of those classes because they cost hundreds of dollars, I've noticed that a ceramic class costs like $80 to $100. I looked into, and that's for like maybe a couple of sessions, where I am able to this time around allow for people to just buy a $20 book or $25 book and then get those prompts, get them going, and see where it takes them with their mental health journey.
That's great. I mean, I think you bring up a really important point, which is the impediment to access for certain artistic works can be really challenging, and I think it's important for us to be mindful of that. I feel like I could talk. I feel like we could just go forever. So we'll pass the mic over to Reith for a sec.
Yes.
Reith, could you start with sort of tracking your journey for us in a little bit more detail?
Yeah, so I graduated from TFS, Toronto Film School, from the Writing for Film and Television program. But my background was actually, as I was an actress back in my home country. And then somewhere I felt like, I'm not doing the kind of cinema that I connect with, I resonate with. And so that's when I started acting at the age of 15. So there was something that told me that, I wanted to go behind the camera. I want to write stories. I want to direct the kind of stories I resonate with. And that's how I moved to Toronto and I completed my program. After completing my program, I believe I have a thing of like, oh, I want to study more. I want to study more, but I didn't know what exactly I wanted to do. I obviously wanted to do something creative. The thing that kind of convinced me to get into BCA was I wanted to understand the business side of Canadian film and TV industry, and that was my interest, and that's how I decided that okay, I should be doing this. And then during the program, um, I don't know how to put this in one line, but it just put me into a rhythm where there were so many different avenues and choices, and literally the education that I felt that I needed, especially to understand not only an industry, but also I grew up in a different kind of a film industry. The rules and regulations are very different. So to understand specifically the television side and also to be taught by professors who are working in the industry was really helpful. And while I was doing the program, I did write a sitcom because I like both scripted and unscripted both, so I can't sometimes make a choice. So I wrote a sitcom with one of my classmates from TFS, and by the time I was graduating, I had it ready and I did pitch the sitcom to a production company, and they were interested to know if I have a showrunner attached. I'm still working on that now. But at the same time, I'm very, very interested in documentary filmmaking. So I started working on two different documentary projects, which I was directing and producing and writing on my own. One was on a Canadian human trafficking survivor, and the other one was about artists next door. So when I was working on this is literally towards the end of our program. And yeah, and from then, I don't know how many job applications I started writing. Like while I was in the program, I would just like sit on LinkedIn and I would be like, I'm going to do this. I'm going to write cover letters. I'm going to write applications. But somewhere deep down, I knew that I was more prepared than I was ever for that. So that's how it all began. And I got my first television show as an associate producer. That's how I started for a CBS show called FBI True, CBS and Paramount Plus, and then I'm working on this is my fifth show right now, and I worked as an associate producer, writer, researcher, and now I'm producing.
And with a few more credits under your belt, you're going to be able to actually be your own showrunner, right? For your scripted.
Yes.
I mean, it sounds like it. That's a very real possibility. I mean, I think so. Walk us through, if we can just get into the nitty gritty here. Walk us through the mechanics of exactly how you landed that first job. Because I know that you're talented, I know you're hardworking, but like, what were the mechanics of like landing that? Because it's obviously like one thing has led to the next for you. But how do you get that first kind of like, turnkey kind of opportunity for your professional development?
Um, Well, I was constantly making these, applying for different jobs, and I was also like creating my own portfolio, so that I'm just not saying that, okay, I'm interested and this is what I can do, but like for me to show what I can do was very important. So that was my first step to create my own portfolio. Yeah.
What does a portfolio look like for you, like as a director producer? Is it just
Uh,
is it just a website? Is it a Vimeo page? Like what does that look like for you?
it's a website, and I have all my video reels on it. So if I've directed a short film, which I did when I was graduating from Toronto Film School, I directed the first short film there, and so the short film, and then the three documentaries that I was working on, and the other short films that I was directing and producing. So most of my work is directing. So for me to again apply for jobs, which was as a producer was a bit challenging there, but I kept doing that. And then one fine day, I still remember it was December of 2023 when I received a call. As it was a very lazy day. I know that I was almost trying to take a nap, and I got a call from an unknown number. I picked it up, and I was told that, so hey, I'm so and so, and I saw your application and your resume. Do you have time now for an interview? So unprepared, and that was the best thing that happened. I was not prepared, uh, and I was asked, many questions, what I can do, what I like, this, that. It was a very impromptu. Again, like I said, I wasn't prepared at all, so I answered everything I was asked. I was told that, well, Reed, it seems like you come from a you know your writing or everything or your past as an actor, like you come from a glamorous background, but this is journalism, this is television. As I said, well, I can share some of the things that I did for journalism, and then that really helped because I've written scripts for my own documentary, which was on human trafficking and things like that. And after the call ended, I looked up like who was this person, and this was a 12-time Emmy award-winning showrunner, and I was like, oh my God, I wish I was a little more prepared. But then in the next 7 days, I signed the contract, the deal memo, and I started working on this show, FBI True.
Wow. I mean, it sounds almost a little bit too good to be true, but I guess you put like literally hundreds of feelers and resumes and cold calling people or cold emailing people.
Yeah, I did that. I did that with like
Yeah.
no shame. I would just reach out, and sometimes I won't even hear back. But I remember I used to send resumes like 3 o'clock in the night. I'm still doing that, and my friends and they knew that how crazy I was. And I was like, I'm just putting this, I'm manifesting this. This is going to happen. So I'm going to try. I don't know anyone from television, so I just kept trying.
So is it difficult for you to manage your brand, as we call it, because you do scripted, you do documentary, you do shorts, you do like you have a background as an actor, you're currently working as a producer, like you cover a lot of ground. Can you talk a little bit about how you sort of define your brand there?
Yes. Well, acting at the moment is completely in the background. I don't even I have an agency, but I don't really get time to do that. I'm just like constantly producing. But when I get this break between one show to another, I jump back on my script, a feature script that I'm writing right now. It's done. It's actually the 15th draft I'm on right now. It's a time traveling story, and my heart is there, but also I wouldn't say that my heart is not there in true crime. When I initially started working, in true crime, I wouldn't get sleep because I had to see like was like a homicide, like multiple homicide cases, who killed who and where is this happening. So that became my life. So from someone who writes time traveling stories to like jumping right into like, crime scene, it was tough. But to answer your question, I don't know how I don't know about my branding. Like for me, I put 100% in whatever I do, whether it is writing, a scripted. I didn't really direct any shots for the past 1.5 year now, but I did produce around 5 short films for my friends in the community. In case of directing, I am preparing myself to direct my feature, which is a time traveling story, and but I barely get any time. Branding wise, I think I'm mostly known now as a television producer who either produces history or true crime. Right now, I'm working on a Fox Nation show. It's a history, true crime. So,
Okay, so it's an evolving brand identity, so to speak. Um, that's great. We'll come back to you in a few moments. Thanks so
thank
much. Let's go to Ahisu. Can you track for me a little bit in a little bit more detail your sort of background, and then I'll ask you a couple of follow-up questions similar to the last two conversations.
I'm sure. Okay, where do I start from? I think I didn't have I mean, I was like a creative young child, but then I also started with like a business background. So I had a degree in economics. And then I figured out real quick that that wasn't really for me. I feel like a lot of us it's like start, it was like, oh, want to be doctors, want to be engineers, and then we figure out, nah, not that path. Right. So then I started and I realized that I loved photography. So I started doing photography. So this is about like 2014 now. So I started doing photography in like 2014, finished the program, did that for a little bit. Then I was like, and then like the people I'll take pictures for, the clients that I'll take pictures for would be like, oh, do you do videos as well? And all of that. So it was the demand that made me transition into doing videography, right? Then I was like, oh, I really want to do this well. Then I moved to Toronto, right? And went to film school at Toronto Film School. And then this was like 2020, right? So there was a pandemic. So I'm trying to figure out, oh, what am I doing? How do I do this? How do I navigate this new normal at the time? Right. So we do all of that. Um, and then in the program, I realized I'm more a creative than a business person, as much as I have a business background. But then I realized I'm 95% creative. But for me to be successful, I have to also be a creative business person. Right. So that led to the BCA. Unfortunately, the BCA started because I was going to go and do the business administration at Yorkville. But then it was like just around that time, the BCA program was about to launch, and I was like, okay, when I finish this, I might as well just transition into doing this. And yeah, it's just been one production after the other. Now I work doing live broadcast productions on YouTube. They produce a program for cable TV on 3 different networks, I think. So that's my journey so far. That makes sense.
And are those projects sort of like similar to Reef, like a producer for hire? Like there's a client whose vision you're serving, or how does that work exactly?
Okay, so I started as a freelancer, independent, I mean, like hired gun, and then but now for the past year and a half, or no, year and a few months, I've been working for a particular organization whereby it's like live broadcasts every week. There's a production, that kind of thing.
So is that a dependable job then? Like, is that sort of like a full-time gig for you, or is that still kind of like a bit of a contract here, contract there kind of? And
So
again,
right now it's full time.
I
Oh
just
yeah, sorry.
I just go for it and like ask the real like kind of prying
Yeah,
questions. If anything is like a little too personal or financial stuff that you don't want to disclose, you don't have to go there.
no
But
problem. That's fine.
You guys know me, real talk, right? So,
Yeah, real
uh,
talk.
yeah.
Yeah, so again, I started out doing the freelance stuff, but then I'll be like, look, this month I didn't get nothing. Next month I got like 3, 4 gigs. And then I was outside of the inconsistencies, right? So I was like, oh, to mitigate that inconsistency, I need to find something full-time that also when I have downtimes in my freelance opportunities, I have this going side by side. But I think for the past year or year and a half, I've done more of this. So I haven't really had time to do as many freelance gigs because this also pays good. So yeah,
Okay, good. Well, that's good. But I mean, you got to make money, right? It's like, I think you
yeah,
guys all live in Toronto. Well, Regina, you live just outside of Toronto, but I mean, it's expensive here, right? So,
it
uh,
is.
you got to make some money. So, okay. So how do you balance then, or how do you attempt to balance the kind of the creative side, which you spoke to, like that's your passion, that's your leaning, but similar to me, maybe a little bit like the reluctant producer side, where you're like, I know that I need to do this in order to be able to do the other thing that I really want to do. How do you kind of struggle with or wrangle or manage that balance between creativity and business?
How do I manage the balance? I- Now I'm a businessman first. I used to be a creative first, but now I'm a businessman first because I realized for you to um for you to survive, not survive, but for you to grow, for your business to be sustainable, right? You have to think about the business, you have to be profitable, you have to talk to investors, you have to do all of that, right? Creativity for me is like thankfully comes naturally. Ish. I don't have to like, oh, it's like, oh, I have to go and do something extra. Like I could just like, oh, this is the idea. I was like, oh, this is what I'm thinking. But then what comes to me that's a little bit more difficult is the business side, right? So I had to channel my energy to the business side and growing that skill and knowing how to negotiate and knowing how to have conversations, especially the difficult ones, right? It's like, oh, you're trying to procure resources to, for instance, we have a production, we need to rent equipment. You need to know how to have that conversation to like that best serves your need, right? So I needed to understand that and know how to just manage or create a balance. Like right now, I would say I'm 60% business and 40% creative because again, I have to step into like a producer's shoes, right? And I also have other people that I collaborate with, right? So it's like cross-functional, right? I have photographers, I have graphic designers that we all work together to make like the vision come to life. So it's not just doing it by myself, right?
No, that's a necessary part of the process where you're at right now. Also, in terms of like trying to build your brand, build your kind of creative identity here in Canada. I remember. So, how do you move to Simi? I see you have a hand, and we'll come to questions in about 15 minutes. Is that okay? People can raise their hands or add um, questions in the chat or the Q&A. I'm not sure. Either, maybe. We'll figure that out later when we get to questions. But yeah, we'll just keep it with the main conversation now, and we'll come back to the questions in order when we pause for discussion. But Ahisu, let's just go back a quick step. So, had you moved to Toronto already when COVID started? Because remember, we had class together at Toronto Film School, right?
Yeah.
Long before the BCA.
Yeah. So I moved here in January of 2020. So that was just before COVID started. And then I was free for 3 months, and then it was like shut down, and then I
Wow.
literally had to re-navigate all of that.
Do you feel like
Right.
you're
So
at
I
a
took a
place,
pause.
right? Do you feel like you're at a place with your career building right now where you're stable enough that you want to kind of continue to live and work in Canada?
Um, I think I'm grateful that I'm pretty stable, like where I'm at. I love Canada. I won't lie. I'm not one of the people that's like, oh, I want to go back home. I want to stay here. I feel like there's so many opportunities here, personally. Um, but again, I've had to brace through all the parts that are not too pretty, right? It's like I've gone through the points where it's like, oh, I don't know where the money's going to come from, and then the money comes, and then I'm just like, so there's been like um the journey, right? So I've been through it. So I would say I'm pretty stable
Well, that's fantastic.
and
No easy feat for sure for somebody who's a newcomer here. You talked a little bit about the challenges of negotiating, working with people in different departments, managing conflict. Can you maybe talk about one time where you've had to sort of navigate a challenging situation or a conflictual situation with another person that you've been working with and sort of what challenges you faced and how you overcame them?
I could think of one that happened maybe fairly recently. So we're going into production of like a major event for this organization I work with. Um, and then one of the directors, because again, producing and managing in terms of like technical support and all of that, managing all the cameras and all of that. There was a director, someone directing, right? And then the client had asked for something, right? For instance, they want to see like a grand production, right? That kind of thing. Because it's happening in real time and it's happening live. It's streaming on YouTube, it's streaming on wherever platform is streaming, right? And the director was like, "Oh, this is what I want to do," but then the client was asking for something. Remember, it's the client that's paid for all of this to happen, right? So for me, as a producer in that situation, my job is to make sure my client is happy, right? And then we can have a conversation with director. It's like, look, this is what the client is asking for. I know you want to do things this way, but these are the people that are paid for us to be here, right? So it's like also managing that producer director relationship so that it doesn't affect the producer client relationship in this case, right? So I've had to manage situations like that, or maybe people that are less skilled in operating certain equipment, and it's like, oh, you can't be offended because you can't operate this equipment right now. If you get more training, you can operate this in like a near future, that kind of thing. So those kind of situations I've had to navigate and resolve kind of by managing relationships. So the way I think about it is you have to manage up, you have to manage down, you have to manage all the way around as a producer.
Nicely put.
Yeah.
Um, okay, let's leave it there for now. Let's flip over to Adam. Thanks, Ahisa. Amazing. Adam, can you give us a little bit more background and detail on your kind of journey to where you're at now so far, and then we can take it from there?
Yeah, I have kind of a strange journey. I started over at 29, but I'll rush through the first part just because I feel like it's kind of inspiring to people that don't realize they want to do art till later. Um, my original background was in civil engineering. I had a diploma. I worked in construction for 10, 11 years and was just not happy. At 29, I quit, moved out west, decided I was going to go be a ski bum. That was my only passion at the time. 3 months in, I got hit by a drunk driver going back to our cabin. Forced me back home. I had to do physio. And while I was recovering, I got back into drawing and painting. It was something I really liked as a kid, but didn't do as an adult. Um, I decided there I was going to find what my passion was and stick to it. So I applied to a tattoo shop, started an apprenticeship. A year into my apprenticeship, I got accepted at Toronto Film School. So I decided to go there because I kind of realized in the shop that I didn't understand what branding yourself was. It was like I worked with around all these artists that had their own styles, and I didn't know how to develop that. I could like mimic other people's styles, but I couldn't really come up with my own. So I kind of decided like I needed to go learn the theory behind art more. So I went to Toronto Film School. I loved it. I've like realized art was not my passion and designing was. I think it spoke more to like the analytical side. I loved problem solving. So like getting to do creative problem solving just like instantly fit with me. Um, I got really lucky. I got hired right out of school. I think I did 2 or 3 interviews, and then I got hired at Hockey Shot. So it was my in right into sports. Shout out to them because they took a huge chance on me. I had no portfolio, a small one from Toronto Film School, but nothing of real substance. Um, I worked there for 3 years until they went bankrupt, fired everybody on Christmas Eve so they didn't have to pay out bonuses. They went into receivership, got bought out by Canada Wide Sports, who ended up being my first freelance client. One person stayed on at Hockey Shot who ended up going to Canada Wide Sports and hired me as a designer to actually work under the umbrella of all their companies. So it was a really cool opportunity. It wasn't enough for full-time work, and I was now going to Yorkville. So I had to figure something out. I reached out to Creative Services. I just learned about them when I was doing freelance. They kind of hook you up with freelance opportunities. They hooked me up with a couple of opportunities. Nothing ever came from it. I didn't end up getting the gigs. And then finally, I got the one with Toronto Blue Jays through them. They needed the project for the next day, and I didn't get it till 9 o'clock at night. So I stayed up all night till like 6 in the morning, tried my hardest on it. They really liked it. So they ended up just feeding me more and more work till they got to the point that they bought my contract out from Creative Services to offer me a full-time role. And then 3 months ago, I got offered the senior design role. Just been grinding ever since.
That was a lot.
Yeah.
Sorry, your story is really kind of wild, man. I didn't know most of that. That's cool. Thank you for sharing. Quite an inspiring story, actually. So creative services. So what is that? Is that like a Jiffy app for?
Yeah, it's like an agency, I guess.
Yeah.
I didn't even realize at the time that so it's actually good to know, if you do find work through them, they kind of own you. When you sign up with them, you are signing a contract that I should have probably read, that a company that they hook you up with cannot offer you a position. They own your contract, and they then have to buy that contract out, which is usually 6 months salary.
Wow.
So it was a really cool opportunity, because I probably wouldn't have got in with the Blue Jays. But then once I realized what was going on, I felt kind of stuck, and it wasn't until they offered to buy it out that I realized that I was solidified in there.
So even a huge organization like the Blue Jays would use a third party kind of broker, like
Yeah, not normally for like full-time hires, definitely not. But at really, really busy times where all their freelancers are maxed out, they'll use these agencies just to wean out people because the agency will kind of do the work of weaning people out that they don't feel like can do the work. So it's just so like they can trust somebody that can just come in running.
So your job title now is senior graphic designer.
Yes.
But you only graduated like 2 years ago. How do you become senior graphic designer in 2 years, if you don't mind?
Just grinding. I graduated Toronto Film School, I think 5 years ago now, something like that, 5, 6 years ago.
Right.
I really built a lot of my personal brand around just exceeding expectations. Like I've learned in the design world, a lot of people don't know what's expected or know how long something takes. So it's really up to you to be a self-motivator and grind harder than they're even going to give you time to complete something. So like if you have a better idea, you still have to give them their idea and then do your idea. So that's going to come on your own time. But if you love it, you need to. That's what I've realized is the only way to prove yourself.
And how do you manage to developing and nourishing and supporting a personal brand while you're working within this huge organization that's like probably one of the most recognizable brands within Canada, being the Blue?
Yeah, I definitely probably struggle with that. Out of school, I kind of try to develop my brand around my first name, because my first name's actually Winand, and I felt like it was unique enough that I could be separate from everybody. But as I'm more and more involved in the sports industry and going to conferences and meeting other individuals in the industry, I've realized how niche it is, and going by the name that people recognize you for is more valuable. So I'm kind of in the middle. I've actually cleared my whole Instagram. I'm in the middle of rebranding myself in a sense. I'm not totally sure how that's going to be, but yeah, Yeah, I don't know where I'm going with this, but
Okay, that's
yeah.
okay. You don't have to have a perfect answer for all these questions. I mean, but that's a big step. You obviously got to a certain point where you're like, we need a bit of a clean break here, or fresh start, or
It,
whatever expression you
and
want.
in the corporate world, it is such a collaborative environment that it is hard to separate yourself as a brand because I don't even feel like it's me doing everything. There's so many hands involved that to take credit for the whole thing is feels hard to do.
Can you talk a little bit more about collaboration? Because I think you mentioned at the outset that you work within a pretty large team, and
Yeah. Um,
managing egos, managing power dynamics, managing, just the workload itself. Like, can you talk a little bit about how that operates for you currently?
yeah, no egos is super valuable. It's everybody helping out, giving ideas. We have big brainstorming meetings. We have professionals in each field. We have a full content team. We have full motion designers, in game video boards, video guys, graphic designers. Um, so it's a lot of people getting together all the time. Sometimes it can be frustrating because it's a lot of cooks in the kitchen, so to speak, and we don't operate with a creative director, so it does come from just everybody's ideas collectively trying to wean out the bad ones for the good ones and going back to the drawing board sometimes starting over being like I say the biggest quality is just being positive about that, like when everything's on fire just still staying positive.
So there's no kind of decision maker at the top. It's sort of,
I'd, I'd say at the very top, it's hard. I'm not allowed to speak too much on the Blue Jays without going through comms, so I gotta
sure,
tiptoe around it.
sure.
But there is a top person, but then below that, it just kind of umbrellas out.
It sounds like a really interesting process. Thank you for sharing a little bit about that. I realize that we're supposed to move to questions now. And I see one question from Sandy Huckstra in the chat, but I know that's who had their hand up first. Simi, the question is, and I'm not sure who this is for. Do you want to direct this to someone in particular, Simi, or all? Okay, guys. So the question is, and maybe whoever wants to take a stab at this can just like raise a hand because we might not have time for everybody. Um, so how did the BCA prepare you for the job market and future planning? Anyone want to take a
I'll
stab?
jump in there.
Sure.
Yeah. So one of the things that I definitely appreciated from the BCA program was the fact that we did do an entrepreneurship class. So I had done one many years ago in my old program, but having that refresher was really, really helpful, given that there was a lot of things that I may not have um, taken with me from the first time around. So they do offer that in part of the BCA program, and they kind of build it like a project or a portfolio where you build on the different things that you have to do in order to do your project. So in order to be in the job market, you have to have a portfolio, right? And that portfolio can be a number of things. It could be written, it could be visual, it could be design work, it could be anything really. But you have to have something that is solidified in what you're already doing or what you want to do. So what they did is they kind of built us to do the things that we wanted to do in that program, so that way we could use that as a tool to go ahead with when we go into the job market. So that was something for me that they did.
Um, yeah, how did you prepare me? I had for me it's like I had instructors that I could always run to. It's like, oh, I was dealing with real life situations, and for instance, Sandy knows. It's like I'm like, what if this were happening in someone's life? What would you say? What would you do? So I always had a real life scenario that I would bring to class that would lead to like questions and responses and they were always willing to respond. I still have relationships with some of my instructors like Adam Teal, Sandy here, Shepard, Nada Shepard. I think she was an instructor when I was there, but she was also in like an accelerator program. She owned like I think like a fashion recycle business and stuff. So it's like I had all of these people to ask real life scenario questions. So that was one way that it helped me prepare for, or it helped me in applying like those things that I would learn in class, but that I would learn in the program to like real life situations, right? So I would say the practical application of things is one of the ways that the BCA program helped me. It also helped me in like having people that I can always ask questions, like mentors, like people that I can have conversations with, right? You also in class, right? I built a business plan when I was in the program, which I didn't know, like I didn't know how detailed it was, but I see that on my business plan, I'm where exactly I plan to be, not intentionally, right? So I was like, I'll do this, I'll launch, I'll apprenticeship under someone whereby I'm not using my own resources. So at the end of the program, I think there are two final project semesters where you go to the first stage and then you do the second stage. And I was like, that helped me like create like a roadmap for success, right? Those are I think those are the key ways that it has helped me personally. I mean, there may be others, but I don't remember them right now. So
No, that's great. Thank you. Thanks, Ahisu, and thanks, Regine. I think that it's true that, having that face-to-face contact if you're a campus student, and having that one-on-one or one to two, depending on the size of your group, one to three, um, feedback and direct kind of personalized feedback as you're sort of preparing your portfolio and whatever that may look like. This sort of almost segues nicely into Sandy Hucksher's question, which is about website versus social media. And Reith, I'll flip this one to you. Is a website still relevant in the age of social media? Essentially, is the question in the chat.
Yes, that's a very good question, actually, and 100%. When you are reaching out to these production companies and line producers, showrunners, executive producers, they will never come to your social media to check what's happening there. Also, it's about branding, right? I'm branding myself as a producer, so they would want to see what you have in your website or what you have in your resume. For me, my social media is earlier, my social media was more like an open book, like everyone could come and visit it. But I feel more private nowadays, and I feel like I would want to keep my social life outside of my professional life. So yes, 100% in the corporate world or in the professional world, they want to see your resume, your portfolio. They don't have any interest in your social media like Instagram or Facebook. I mean, social media, like, not LinkedIn is not really, it's a social media, but it's just a different platform altogether. People there are more interested to know about your work. So that's a different way to look at it. But other than that, if you're talking about Instagram or Twitter works for some cases, but Facebook, no.
And what should a portfolio look like, right? There's so many different ways we can talk about a portfolio. Like it could be a Google Drive folder, it could be a website, it's going to, of course, be different from discipline to discipline. What does a portfolio for a dance artist look like versus a filmmaker versus someone in publishing? Um, does anybody have any insights on best practices for portfolio development?
I have just one thing. One thing I think is valuable for the portfolio is to explain what your role was in that project if it was a big project. Because a lot of the time that when we're reviewing resumes, we'll see like a really cool project that we may have even referenced on something at some point, and we're like, "Oh, this is the guy that did it." But then we're like, "Or is it? Were they one person that did one little part of it, and now it's become a huge part of their portfolio?" So
Right.
I think more explanations in portfolios than just showing the work.
That's
I
great.
agree with what Adam is saying, like being transparent and honest about like what was your position in this particular uh, show or project. That's really important. And when I mentioned about the social media, I'm sorry, I'm just talking about my discipline and talking about my area of work. But for, a certain branding, I'm sure Instagram works and other medias work. So it was just about how I deal with it.
Um, can I say something to that?
Yeah.
I feel like it depends on your discipline. For filmmakers, they say, oh, you have to have a website. For designers, they say you have to print it out or you have to have it on this, that, that. So I would say it depends on the discipline of wherever it is and what exactly. Like a photographer would want to have like printed pictures so that it's like, oh, I can say that I can get this style of. So for me, it's like depending on which area you're interviewing for or who you're talking to is like, but you also want to also make sure you're offline and online, right? Offline is like someone is in person, you have this, you want to show them, there you go. Someone is online, you're unable to reach them, there you go. I have a website or I have an Instagram. I unfortunately I'm not active on Instagram intentionally right now because again, like Adam, I'm trying to rebrand and it's like, oh, these are the kind of productions I want to put on my page, right? So there's that. So depending on how you want to be perceived is how I would say you should go. And also to tackle what Timmy said about being online, I don't think being online is an excuse. I'm not saying it's an excuse, but it's an excuse. I was hybrid, right? But I would send emails, I'll book sessions with my instructors whereby we could meet outside of the class time, right? There were times where fortunately I was in person, so in Toronto, so I could meet Sandy and say, "Oh, let's go out for drinks or let's go sit down and have a chat," right? But you're unable to do that. Doesn't mean you can't still connect with your instructors or your classmates. Just want to throw that out there.
And one
Oh,
second part of Kevin's question was just how do you find mentorship, outside of just your professors? Like any advice on connecting with industry or how you would find that kind of extracurricular sort of mentorship?
you know what's funny? I found some mentorship in my partnership with my peers. That was a great thing. I was able to learn so much about different industries and the same industry, but a little bit in a different perspective. So collaborate as much as you possibly can with your peers, and they can teach you some things that you may not have learned before. I remember teaching somebody about something very, very simple in my class, and they're like, "Oh, I didn't know that before," and I'm like, that's great. Like now you have something to work with.
Um, Florence has just reminded me that there's the chat and there's also the Q&A, and I've been
Oh dear.
neglecting the Q&A. So let me just flip over quickly. Um, take it. Can you guys see the Q&A? Does anybody want to jump in
I can see it. Yes.
yes.
I'm just going to quickly answer the one for me from
Yeah, sure.
Chris. So, did you self-publish your book? If so, what was the process like? So, you have to basically have a file put together. So, the one big thing is to make sure that you have your InDesign file. For us, we made sure that we made it into one of those readable PDFs. And then we, of course, made sure that we were able to upload it to Amazon. So it's really, really simple. There's nothing crazy to it. It's just putting in the work to get the file created. That is the most time consuming, and then being able to upload it to Amazon. That's the self-publishing route. I'm also working with Krista to get an agent as well, to go a different publishing route as well, because you can only do so much with self-publishing. There's only so many people by word of mouth, by branding and all that other stuff that will actually get it out. So you have to be very mindful of those other routes as well to be able to be successful.
Do you feel like that was probably the right decision for this project, Regina? Or are you happy
Yes.
with your choice though? Yeah.
Oh, I'm very happy with it.
Yeah.
I still go out and I meet people and they're like, "What do you do?" And I'm like, "Well, I have a book and I'm a creative professional." And they're like, "Okay, cool. What about that book that you just mentioned?" And it works in a lot of cool ways where you can actually be like, "It's on Amazon. You can pull it up on your phone right now." Or I have a QR code. I give bookmarks out, like so I'm marketing myself that way. So I always have those things on hand just in case I meet somebody new and I'm like, "Hey, I'm marketing myself. Here's my book."
Amazing. And sorry, we're not going to get to all of these questions, guys. There's a couple from PK. Is it important to have a small portfolio or a really good resume? Um, Is that an either or?
Portfolio for sure.
Portfolio for sure. That's
Yeah.
rapid fire. I like that. Um, okay, Edison, what is this? Olivia, Are there other hard technical skills you found that are highly useful in your work today, which might not come to mind at first when thinking about doing creative work? Example, software, coding, design, programs, etc.
Oh, this one, I love this. Adam, you could totally talk about this too. Your skill sets to bring to the BCA is whatever you've done before. So if you're heavily into coding, if you're heavily into designing, if you're heavily into anything really that has a skill set that you already learned, it really helps for when you're doing your final project for the BCA program. I definitely know that having a graphic design background helped me with, designing and putting it all together. And then I learned some other things along the way to kind of contribute to that. Adam?
That was a great answer. I think once you're in the field, just bringing the skills of like your researching skills and really learning how to like dig deep into something rather than just looking at it on surface level. I think that's something that really BCA really helped me. I didn't have a ton of researching skills before that program, and now I love the analytics and psychology behind design, and like we'll try to go deep into it when we're doing big projects.
Great. Thanks so much, guys. I think that, of course, we didn't get to every question. I'm so sorry. The conversation was just so stimulating that it just kept moving in all sorts of different wonderful directions. Thank you guys very much. Yeah, this is being recorded. It'll be uploaded to YouTube and shared to attendees once it's online, likely in a week or so. I'm just reading. Thank you very much. Thanks to Edison for putting this together. Thanks, Regine. Thanks, Reith. Thanks, Adam. You guys rule. Thanks, Ahisu. You guys are wonderful. And thanks to all of our participants with your great questions. Let's keep the conversation going. This will not be the last of this type of event that we're doing for career services to support our current students and recent alumni. So yeah, I look forward to seeing you guys again at the next one. Different topic, some different folks involved, I'm sure. But yeah, this has been a blast, and thank you so much for sharing time and sharing your wonderful insight and experience with me. Feel very lucky.
Thanks, Andy.
All right. Thanks, you guys. Be
Bye-bye.
well. Be well, everyone. Now
Thank you.
leave. Bye.
Bye,
Now leave.
everyone.
Goodbye. It's over. It's over, right?